It's a curious thing to look at friendships. It's very strange to just step outside of oneself for a moment and look at the ways in which lives get connected, and the ways in which lives can get connected, and the connections that hold those lives together. How some friendships fall by the wayside and others last. How some friendships rise out of a convenience of location. We just happen to be at the same place at the same time for long enough time to form a bond. When some friendships develop in the complete absence of connection. It's an odd thing. I look at the people in my life that I would call friend, and I find no ideological or aesthetic unifying factor. For every friend I have who sports tattoos or piercings, I have another who can't make it through a day without wearing a tie, by their own choice. For every friend who enjoys a good sermon on Sunday, I have a friend who enjoys a good atheist barbecue. How is it that we can sit and enjoy each other's company, enjoy passionate debate on subjects where we disagree on every possible point, and yet at the end of those debates share a good laugh, monologues about boobies? How is it that with such radically different ideas we can still call each other friend? There's a bit of wisdom that I've but recently stolen from Azranak, and if you haven't checked out his videos, you should. He got me thinking about the idea that when we come together on a given subject, if, let's say, you and I were to sit down and debate about the existence or non-existence of God, that subject is just a pretext for communication. That subject is kind of akin to the living room in which we would sit, but isn't really substantial to the conversation itself. I take that idea of the topic as more of a conversational living room than the actual focus of discussion. And then I look back at my friendships. I look back at these long series of debates, some of them stretching on for years, some of them in their beginnings. And I ask, what are we really talking about? If God, Christianity, Jesus, the Bible, science, logic, philosophy, even language itself, if these are subjects that we are just focusing on to give ourselves a pretext for communication, what is it that we're really talking about? What is it that we really engage in? And here I think I find an answer. Here I think I find an explanation for this curious arrangement of friendship, which seems to know no common bound. In retrospect, the answer is obvious, because it's a point that I make often in this sort of context. A phrase that I find myself saying more and more these days is simply, I care far less about what you think than how you think. I care far less about the convictions that you hold than how you came about those convictions, how you go about revising them, and what sort of action you feel those convictions merit. I look to our debates. I look to our long, drawn-out debates on very serious subjects about which we are very passionate. And I find that the one common thread is that we are, whichever side of the debate we're on, we are saying as loudly and as passionately as we can manage that ideas matter, that ideas can change lives, and that the willingness of the individual to engage in the process of idea, to treat ideas not so much as one would a series of teacups sitting on the shelf at a department store, but rather clay that you're constantly working on a potter's wheel. That a willingness to engage in idea, its making, its implementation, its ornamentation, its transformation, that this willingness can transform the individual, can transform a life, and in the process of informing behavior, of guiding behavior, it can transform the lives of others as well. It is, perhaps when stated so bluntly, not so surprising that I find this passion espoused by theist and atheist alike, and that I find myself gravitating towards and seeking the company of people who espouse this passion. If you're watching, I would like to think that it is because you are drawn to this as well. I would like to think that it is because you believe that your ability to shape ideas, that your ability to convey those ideas to others, your ability to receive ideas from others and work that clay into the clay that you already had on the wheel, can transform your behavior, can transform the world around you. I wonder how many of our disputes that seem less like clay spinning on a wheel and more like the wheels of a car spinning in the mud would actually gain some traction if we spent some time looking at what we're really arguing about, stepping away from the familiar forms of debate, the familiar point for point, wherein we exchange evolution versus creation, intelligent design versus determinism. If we were to retire these ideas, at least for a moment, and ask, what am I really trying to convey? What is really important to me? When I spend a sleepless night staring at the ceiling, half cursing that I can't get to rest, and half obsessed with something turning over and over in my mind, what is it that I'm really chasing? And is that something that I can bring to someone else? Is that something that, in bringing it to someone else, I might find some solace, I might find some peace, or, at the very least, I might find a different perspective, a different angle on this problem that obsesses me so. And even if it brings us no closer to a solution, perhaps we find some respite in knowing that in that sleepless night, we are not alone in staring at our ceiling. I try and often fail to get past the trappings of familiar dialogue, familiar debate. But on those beautiful, rare occasions when I really succeed, I find something much more valuable than winning or losing. I find something much more valuable than feeling that I have power over the mind of another. I find that more often than not, while jargon and jingoism may serve to fracture communication, to crystallize idea in a way that is brittle, a willingness to engage in both personhood and process is never wasted, is never trivial. Every truly meaningful communication is one step away from a world in which we are merely actors, playing out the lines that we have been given across a stage that consists of cheaply painted backdrops, muslin stretched on framework, and furniture that we salvaged from a Goodwill, and gets us one step closer to a world where trees really are trees, where the people really are people. And while there still may be some detail lost in the glare of the lights or the thickness of the makeup, we are closer to writing our scripts rather than reading our scripts.